Last time, we looked at how what we think or feel about a situation dramatically changes what happens, and how whether we believe I can or I can't can totally change the outcome that we get. Today, we're looking at how we can best use this principle to improve our lives. At the end of the last video, I took the liberty of giving you a bit of homework. And do watch that video if you haven't seen it already, because it lays a really good foundation for this one. And one of the examples we gave was of a runner, and how the same person, whether they believe they can or they can't win a race, will actually change the outcome of whether they do or they don't win it. And I asked you to observe in your lives where you saw this principle in action, whether your beliefs about whether you can or can't do something actually affect the outcome that you get. Today, we're looking at 5 ways that we can make practical use of this principle. Just noticing how we're thinking makes a big shift in itself. Just to be able to observe the things that I believe I can do really well in are the things that I do well in, and the things that I don't believe I can do really well in, I'm not doing so well in. And that's not only because I've tuned my belief into what I can see, but because what I can see and what I believe is changing what my outcomes are. When we start to think like this, when we start to see the situation like this, we're looking at ourselves as an outside observer almost. We're no longer sort of so intensely involved in the situation. We're seeing ourselves more from outside, like somebody else would see us. And we're much more able to notice what the process is and how our beliefs affect our outcomes. And that's really good because it empowers us. It reminds us that what happens to us is our choice, and we're not a victim of life. We can create a different sort of life by thinking in a different way. It might sound a bit far-fetched at first, but try it out. It's a known phenomenon and it's been studied. And it's often called name it to tame it. Because just by taming, and it could be anything, it could be an emotion, it could be a reaction, when we put a name to it, it puts us in that observer state, so we're looking at it from the outside. But we have to be careful that our intention is to actually tame it and not to blame it. We don't want to name it to blame it, because there is that danger that we might start to think, oh, well, these are my beliefs and they're causing all my problems and I can't do anything about my beliefs. So we put ourselves as the victim of the beliefs, and then that takes our power away. We need to remind ourselves that the reason we're naming it is to remind ourselves that we have the ability to make a different assessment of any situation and to affect our outcomes in that way. And then we can honestly ask ourselves the question, is this belief true? But with the understanding that we went into a lot more last time, that it's not that I have to observe whether it's true and find out whether or not I can and can't do something and then believe that and I've got the correct belief. It's actually the opposite way round, and what's true comes from the belief that I have about whether I can or I can't. It's the belief that comes first, and we affect our reality with that belief. It sounds really counterintuitive, but it's demonstrably true. And it's worth checking in and observing ourselves. And when we realize that, and when we start to see it in action, then we can really ask ourselves the question, if I have the ability to create my truth, why am I continually creating a truth that I don't want, creating a life and a reality that isn't what I'm aiming for? Just being aware of this process and observing it in action during our lives is itself hugely empowering, because it allows us to challenge the story we've been telling ourselves that's become stronger and stronger over time. Because if I'm believing on a regular basis, I can't do things well, I always lose, I'm not good at communication, relationships always go wrong for me, I never get success at work, or whatever it is, I start to believe that as my identity, as that's who I am. So I'm the sort of person who fails. I'm the sort of person who can't succeed at certain things. And then it becomes much more difficult to change. When we see this process in action and we understand that our reality comes from our thoughts, it gives us the power to know that we can use our thoughts to then change our reality. And we don't need to lie to ourselves with wishful thinking, because that wouldn't work anyway, because we'd know deep down it wasn't true and there'd be a part of us that was rebelling against it. We just need to notice and remember how this process works. And then it doesn't make any sense to say, I am this sort of person, when I know that if I think differently, different things could happen for me. We might need to pinch ourselves a few times during the process because it's so different. It's such a different way of thinking from how mainstream thinking is and what we're used to in our lives, that we will doubt it. We will think, can this really be true? Am I not tricking myself? So we need to get really clear and really start observing the process, then making the choice about how we want our lives to be. But we can't expect things to change immediately. This is one of the biggest reasons people give up with this process. They go through all of these steps, they change their story, and then they notice, well, nothing's happening in my life. I've changed my story, I've understood this truth, and yet nothing is changing. So obviously this isn't working. The change isn't always, but can be, quite slow. Because if you think that we've had years and years of lying to ourselves with negative stories about ourselves, and we've conditioned ourselves so deeply to react in certain ways to things that happen to us, it's not going to be overnight that things change. We are now the result of what we were thinking in our past. What we think now will affect our future. Now, whether that's the future tomorrow or next month or next year, depends on a whole number of things which is unique to each of us, but we need to be patient in case it takes longer than we hope. And during that time, we need constant reaffirmation of the new truth that we've taken on. Not just as empty words that we don't really believe and we're just saying in a desperate hope that something might change, but we think that it probably won't, but more as a reminder of a new deep truth that is now our reality, and a sort of feeling of having already achieved it. Already achieved in the sense that all of the preparations have been done for this to be real, and now I'm just undergoing the process of bringing that reality about. And that's most powerful if we can encapsulate that result in a feeling and try to conjure up that feeling and enjoy that feeling as often as possible. Because if we're focusing on everything that's wrong or everything that we don't have yet, and wondering about how long we have to wait, well, we're just going to make the waiting longer, because remember the old phrase, where attention goes, energy flows. If we focus on the time that we have to wait, we're just extending that time. It's like when I do an energy healing session at the beginning, I always get the client to try to think about what the goal is that they want to achieve and attach a feeling to that goal, to experience within themselves what they will experience once that goal is achieved. And since doing that, that step on its own, I feel, has made a huge impact on the results of the sessions. And at the deepest level, this is also what heartfulness meditation can do for us. Because if we practice for a while, regularly and sincerely, we're sort of gifted this very deep, very sublime and subtle inner condition that we feel in the heart, and is so attractive that it often pulls us back to itself during daily life, not just when we're meditating. And of course, the more we focus on it, the more powerful it becomes and the more it permeates more of our lives. This is what we're talking about doing. This is how we change the reality of our lives in the ways that we want to. But we do need to expect some sort of time lag between when we start this process and when we start to see the results, and to maintain our patience and faith during that time. One of the things we didn't mention last time when we were talking about the runners is the impact on them and on how they feel about themselves and what they believe about themselves of the attitude of the crowd who are watching them. In any sport, having strong supporters is really critical to the success of the team. And it's because having support from outside reinforces our own self-belief and reminds us of the truth that we've chosen to accept. The spectators are effectively reminding us, you are great, you are going to win, we support you and we're with you. And we're energetic beings. The people around us, the environment around us of humans, has a really major impact on how we think and feel about ourselves, and therefore what we can achieve. I saw one study recently where it was measurably shown that people who sit within 25 meters in an office environment of exceptionally high achievers, their performance goes up significantly and measurably. And people who sit within 25 meters of somebody who maybe doesn't bother, maybe has conflicts with other people, is a very low achiever, their performance measurably goes down. It's a demonstration of how important our human environment really is. Ultimately, of course, what we think, what we believe, what we feel is our responsibility. But it's so much easier to make a good job of it if we're surrounded by people who are aligned with what we want to achieve and who are supporting us in that, and we let other people who are not aligned with it and who might be taking us in a different direction fall away. And that's why it's so important to use our environment to create support around us, rather than be in an environment where we're constantly having to increase our resolve and almost sort of fight against our surroundings to make the progress that we want to make. And we can do that in any way that we want. It might be as simple as connecting with more people who are going through the same sort of process as we are, or who are, on the same path or supporting that sort of path, which could be in person, it could be online. And even if you don't want to connect with people individually, there are a whole load of resources online, on YouTube especially, which really promote this sort of mindset and this sort of way of thinking. As you probably know, my preferred avenue for this, because it's what I do, is energy healing, where we aim to weaken those sabotaging beliefs that are creating a reality that we don't want. And there's a method called the Belief Code, which is specifically designed to achieve that. And that's the one that I use most often, and it's in the highest demand. You can find out more about how I work at heartfulhealing.co.uk. And there's also a page on the website about heartfulness meditation, which we don't offer through Heartful Healing, but which is freely available to everybody. Ultimately, of course, the best help we can get is from ourselves. To stop believing the lies we've been telling ourselves and the story we've been giving about ourselves for so long, and to keep reinforcing the new truth that we've chosen so that we don't divert from it. And if we do divert from it, which will actually happen for the reasons we've talked about in this video, not to be defeated by that, to expect it, not to let it pull us back to the old thinking, and to remember to celebrate how much more often we are remembering our new truth. Most importantly, we need to know unshakably that change is possible, and it's possible for us, and that it's in progress, and that all the groundwork has already been done. We just need to sit through this process while it unfolds. Next time, we'll be talking about a really simple but really powerful way to improve our lives by transforming how we feel, transforming what we can achieve, how much energy we have, that often gets overlooked when we talk about how we need to think differently. And it's about the power of movement. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this week's wise words, which come from the 1930s.
To improve the way you're feeling, book a session with a heart full of heat. To get you fine